The Mauler twins had the potential to be the most dangerous villains in the Invincible universe, and it's actually a good thing that Oliver stopped them before they were capable of reaching their full potential. Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, what can they do when you have full-grown Viltrumites running around, knowing that the Maulers were completely fodderized by Oliver, who's essentially a baby? But walk with me while I explain what they're truly capable of. One important thing to note about the Maulers is that not only are they kinda strong, but they're also very intelligent. Scarily so. Just off a whim, they were able to create a device that completely shuts down a person's nervous system. This device being so potent that it even worked on a Viltrumite, albeit momentarily. I'm sure they could come up with a MacGuffin device that allows them to rule the world, but they wouldn't need to because they've already mastered everything they need in order to accomplish that using their cloning process. You see, the Maulers aren't actually twins. They're copies of the same guy, John Mauler. See, Johnny happened to be born an only child, and he had felt that the only other person who he could really connect with was himself. So he dedicated his life to mastering genetic engineering, and he cloned himself. Johnny also had a bit of an ego problem, so he designed the cloning process in such a way that the clone was indistinguishable from the original, so he could never tell who came first. The important thing for us to note today is that the Maulers aren't just good at cloning themselves, they're also good at cloning anyone, as we saw when they made that brand new body for Robot to live in. So what if they did that process, but for themselves? Instead of cloning themselves into a perfect replica of their own body, what if they cloned themselves into the body of someone way stronger and faster than they are? Someone that was born with their powers and it wasn't given to them by genetic tampering or a glowing meteorite, so they wouldn't have to worry about whether or not the powers would come with the new cloned body. What if they cloned themselves into... One Invincible is dangerous enough, but imagine you have two with the creative genius of the Maulers. They'd be unstoppable. And it isn't like it'd be difficult to come across his DNA. Invincible gets his ass beat on a regular basis. You just wait for a moment where he spills some blood and there goes your DNA sample. We've seen that they don't need a lot of blood to create a clone. They even made a new Mauler out of a single drop of blood. Even if they didn't want to rely on chance, the Maulers are strong enough to harm Invincible and draw blood. If they really wanted to, they could study his flight paths and regular movements to find the best place to jump him and steal his DNA. If Powerplex could study Invincible to get the drop on him, I find it hard to believe the Maulers couldn't if they put their minds to it. It'd be almost too easy, but it's a shame that they'd never do something like this. Remember that ego problem I mentioned? The Maulers are always trying to one-up the other, and any perceived weakness between them both would lead to a power imbalance. Like when one of them was burnt before he cloned himself and they were able to instantly recognize who was the clone and who wasn't. Just that small difference was enough for one to crown himself King Mauler and treat the clone like a slave, regardless of whether or not the burnt Mauler himself was a clone. It's likely also why there's only ever two of them at a time. If they made a third, they'd immediately know who's the clone and who isn't, and they treat that clone like a slave. You give them a Mauler in the body of a physically superior specimen, they treat the other like dirt and get too caught up in being petty to do anything meaningful. On the flip side, while making that clone body, they could put in a bunch of hidden failsafes like they initially tried with Robot, and then that would lead to a power imbalance as well. Ego really is man's greatest weakness. If only there was a way for them to control the clone without putting themselves inside the body. Say for instance, a device that allowed them to overpower the will of any living being, or some way they could modify the clone body so it's less like a clone and more like a living weapon that does nothing but take orders. That way there'd be no power imbalance because they both have equal claim to using said living weapon. Too bad a device like that doesn't exist. Oh wait.
A global defense agency control caller placates the strongest of wills, a highly restricted technology.
In the episode where the Maulers create a new body for Robot, in exchange for building that body for him, Robot offers them the schematics to a device that allows them to control any individual regardless of their willpower. Now, the schematics that he gave them ended up being bad, but that shouldn't stop them from trying to find the good blueprints. I mean, they have to exist somewhere. I highly doubt Robot came up with that device himself because I imagine he would have used it on the Maulers and forced them to build his new body for him instead of playing a risky game of bargaining with them. It's likely that the device does exist and it's under lock and key at the Pentagon or wherever Cecil stores dangerous weapons, so why not go find it? We know the Maulers are good at locating stuff that's supposed to be hidden because they were able to find out where a nuclear device was located somehow. That information isn't just going to be on a public website for anyone to look up when you have dangerous supervillains running around. If they were able to find that, I imagine it'd be the same level of difficulty for them to find either the control collar or its proper schematics now that they know it exists. And once they get their hands on it, the world becomes theirs to rule. It'd take them a few weeks to clone enough bodies, but once they have an army of of about 50 or so Invincibles, there's nothing anyone could do to put up any form of fight against them. Angstrom Levy was able to completely bring the world to its knees with this group of about 20 or so Invincible variants. And yes, they had some casualties, but all in all, they still won, and they weren't even united as a proper team. They were standoffish and mostly against one another. Imagine what the Maulers could do with an invincible army that follows orders perfectly. There'd be no stopping to talk or waiting for your opponent to fight back because you want to enjoy yourself. They'd immediately eliminate any threat without any worry on what would happen to them. I figured they can do what those evil Invincible variants did and then some in a far shorter amount of time. And it wouldn't matter if you lose 1 or 2 or even 10, because you could just clone more in order to increase the ranks of your army. Once Earth is done, the only real threat to you becomes the Viltrumites, but thankfully, they'd be sending you the key to universal domination, and they don't even know it yet. Once Conquest arrives to Earth, he'll find it already conquered and occupied by Viltrumites, but not ones that he's familiar with. And if he decides to pick a fight, which we know he will, it'll turn into a matter of when, not if, he falls. Conquest is strong, and the only reason he lost to Mark is because he was holding back on top of Eve getting involved. But this time, it doesn't matter if he holds back or not. There's absolutely nothing he'd be able to do against an army of 50 marks. And once he falls, the Maulers gain another pawn to use in their clone army, a much more physically dominant pawn that isn't limited by feelings of loneliness or mental instability, a pawn that has no issue with being a vessel of conquest, a pawn that would have both his arms back. With this invincible Conquest clone army, the Maulers become completely unstoppable. The other Viltrumites are no longer a threat because we know there's less than 50 of them remaining. They could all rush Earth at the same time and they'd be instantly wiped out, leaving the entire universe to be the Maulers to play with. I hope I was able to paint a picture of how truly dangerous the Maulers are. With the potential threat the Maulers pose, I wonder why Cecil hasn't attempted to work with them yet. We know he has absolutely no issue working with bad guys if it helps protect the world, and preventing these guys from becoming universal conquerors definitely falls underneath that umbrella. We know they don't have issue working with others, like when they worked with Robot and Angstrom. And I'm sure Cecil, the man with probably the most resources on the planet, could find something to use to entice them. Seems like a massive ball being dropped on his end, but then again, Cecil doesn't really do his job as efficiently as he could, which is actually a video that I'm working on right now, which should be dropped within a few days of this one. So if that's something you'd be interested in watching, feel free to subscribe. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching.